Good afternoon, Campbell Prairie, Amvest Capital in New York City. I'm the Vice President of Capital Markets. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Silver One Resources Inc. Silver One trades on the venture as SVE, Sierra Victor Echo, and on the OTCQX as SLVRF, Sierra Lima Venture Rio Foxtrot. We hope you'll enjoy today's program. It'll also be in replay mode. Feel free to chat in your questions in the question pane of the GoToWebinar control panel, or simply email them in and try and answer the questions in real time. Amvest Capital is a New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resource sector. Learn more about us and our past and upcoming programs at amvestcapital.com/webinars. Very important disclaimer, this call is most certainly for informational purposes only. Greg, making you presenter if you want to share that and get your video up. Greg Crow, President and CEO of Silver One, over 30 years of experience in the exploration and mining sector, and from 2002 to late 2015, Greg was the president and CEO of the well-known Entrée Gold, and was instrumental in transforming Entrée from an early exploration play to an advanced development mining project in JV with Rio Tinto and its partner Turquoise Hill. Greg, if you want to turn on your webcam, and the floor is yours.
Just a minute here, webcam. Can you see that?
I can now.
Okay,
so take your time. Silver's hot, maybe a little pullback, but why should we pay attention to Silver One and Nevada and silver?
Okay, Campbell, thank you very much. Thanks to Amvest, and thank you to everybody else who is attending today. For those of you, for some reason, there was a little click away from my, what's going on here? Okay. There we are. Okay, so little disruption there. I lost my my PowerPoint. Now I just got it back. There we go. Okay, so Silver One. For those, some of you are not familiar with the company, I'll give you a brief overview of the history of the company, and then I'm going to get in and I'm going to talk about silver, why silver really is important and of increasing importance going forward, and then I'll talk about the three main assets that are in Silver One, and then we'll wrap it up with a little bit of share structure, etc. So for those of you not familiar, Silver One came into being in mid-2016. We actually acquired 3 Mexican silver projects from a company called First Mining Finance. First Mining Finance is one of the companies in the stable of companies run by a fellow by the name of Keith Neumeyer. He also runs the multi-billion-dollar company First Majestic with 3 operating mines in Mexico. As time went on, we wanted to look for something a little more advanced, and we actually came, just a minute here, there we go. We actually acquired a project in Nevada from Silver Standard. It's called the past producing Candelaria Silver Mine. That's a photograph of the project, which just came up on the screen. And just to remind people that there will be some forward-looking statements made during this presentation. So let's talk about Silver One. First of all, not only do we have the Candelaria Mine project, which is said is a past producing silver mine in Nevada, but we also went out and staked a very highly prospective high-grade silver gold copper vein system in eastern Nevada. And just early last year, we had the right to acquire 100% interest in an extremely high-grade vein system in Arizona. Now, we did a financing back in July of last year, $9.5 million Canadian. Of that, Mr. Eric Sprott came in for $5 million of the $9.5 million, and that was the third private placement that he had participated in into Silver One. He's been a very loyal and faithful shareholder going forward. Now let's go on and talk a little bit about silver. Essentially, the uses are growing worldwide. Supply is falling off. Most biggest advancements are essentially in the electronics and solar panel industry, and that industrial component of silver, unlike gold, makes up about 60% of the uses of silver. Demand on an investor basis has increased lately with the rise in silver prices and some questions about a deteriorating US dollar, and that now mounts up to about 40%, including jewelry and silverware. Now, with respect to essentially the electronics industry, of course, electronic vehicles, but also solar panel, the amount of usage is about projected at 850 million ounces annually, whereas this is projected to increase to over 1 billion ounces annually. Solar panels and EVs are really leading the way, and they're projected to consume about 200 plus million as early as in the next 4 years or so. Investor demand, of course, is increasing, and that is directly proportional to the question as to whether the US dollar should remain as the world reserve currency. The other factor about silver is as bull markets in precious metals, silver tends to outperform gold, and we see that in the last few bull markets. And Goldman itself has been calling recently for a 10-year commodity supercycle that would include silver. So we are at the beginning of a new precious metals bull market. Now let's go on and talk about the assets of Silver One and why I think these assets contribute with our mantra that we are a growing, building silver company. Candelaria past producing silver mine essentially lies right along the main highway that joins Reno to Las Vegas, very well situated. Very important historically, was discovered as early as 1864. Between then and 1959, it produced from near surface high grade silver oxide veins, underground mining at an average rate of 1,250 grams per ton silver, pretty high grade for a producing mine, even by today's standards. Now, after that, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it was converted into open pit mining. It mined up until 97, 98, when Kinross decided to, who was the last producer, decided to shut it down with a collapse in silver prices well under $5 per ounce silver. They sold it off to Silver Standard 2001, 2002, who did a drill program, outlined a sizable new resource. They did some studies and decided that with silver prices still languishing under $5, they would move on to other opportunities, and it sat in their portfolio for a few years until we came along and did a deal with Silver Standard in 2017. So what is this resource that Silver Standard outlined? We deem it now to be historic. It was considered a 43-101 compliant at the time, but it's more than 3 years old. Measured and indicated resources of about 44 million ounces of silver, additional inferred resources of about 35 million ounces of silver. But on top of that, there were silver ounces left on the old leach pads when Kinross shut down the operation in 97, 98. They just essentially turned off the taps and they left behind a considerable amount of silver. We've been doing some work on the old heap leach pads, and last year we put out an updated resource report on the leach pads themselves. So in addition to the in situ, in the ground historic resources, we have resources on the heaps. Leach pad number 1, which you'll see in the photograph here, amounts to about 30 million ounces of silver. Leach pad number 2, which sits in behind the hill here, amounts to just about half that, an additional 15 million ounces of silver. Now, with respect to the project itself, very well situated, excellent infrastructure, main highway, Reno to Las Vegas, 2 miles of paved road with the power lines still active. We pay our monthly power bills. We've got 2 water wells, each capable of 500 to 700 gallons per minute. We have resources on the leach pads amounting to approximately 30 plus 15 million ounces of silver. Plus we have historic resources just on on the northeast down dip side from the two big open pits. So we have all the ingredients necessary to reactivate this project. We've been doing extensive sampling, particularly on the leach pads with respect to metallurgical studies, and those are still ongoing, and we hope to continue to look at the best means and methods of potentially recovering silver from those leach pads. We're also evaluating the resource potential with the potential of adding some near surface open pit mineralization to the leach pad mineralization to increase grades and potentially increase recoveries and advance the leach pads using that technique. Now, in terms of what we've done, we did a drill program in late 2019, early 2020, got cut off by COVID in late February, early March, but we did demonstrate that there were some interesting zones of high-grade mineralization, which could be amenable to future extraction through underground mining methods. We had some very interesting intercepts up to 1,100 grams per ton silver and 1.3 grams per ton gold over 8 meters within a 30-meter wide interval. Just in this area here, there seems to be a concentration. We've just announced, or shouldn't say we just announced, we are in the midst of doing an updated drill program. In 2021, we plan on completing 15,000 meters of drilling. We'll be targeting some of this area in through here to look at extensions to that potential underground mineralization, but we're also going to be doing some drilling along strike from the open pits. The idea is, can we expand the amount of near surface mineralization that, as I said earlier, would be amenable to mixing with the heap leach pads in terms of increasing grades and potential recoveries for an earlier operation. Now, the other side of Candelaria is the huge upside exploration potential. We completed an airborne magnetometer survey across the entire property just in 2020. Now, what's interesting is it depicts an extremely strong magnetic high to the north, juxtaposed against this strong magnetic low to the south, and all the historic workings line up right along that break and extend for a couple of kilometers outwards from the area of the big open pit mineralization. There is past production at the Georgine pit, but that was really just started by Kinross. They shut it down in '97, so there's some more resources there. Now, so what we're doing is we are looking at down dip, higher grade, potentially underground mineable mineralization in this area. We're looking at near extensions to the pit mineralization. We're also going to be doing some drilling over in the Georgine area, and we're going to be looking at a new type of mineralization that was not previously spoken about at Candelaria. And that type of mineralization is potentially skarn or IOCG style mineralization. We're finding material on some of the old historic dumps that essentially contain abundant chalcopyrite. They have all the earmarks of potential IOCG type of mineralization, and we're getting values up to 2.7% copper with 25 grams of silver and over 0.5 gram per ton gold. So what we want to look for in the current drill program is we want to look at those nearby extensions to open pit mineralization, down dip high grade, and we're going to test some of the holes around the Georgine pit for these IOCG targets as well. Now, those goals are, of course, we want to do metallurgical testing on some of the reverse circulation material we're going to be extracting from the near surface extensions to the pit. The idea of mixing that with heap leach material down the road for a nearer term extraction, potential high grade for future extraction, and then looking at these more prospective IOCG targets. So that's what we're doing at Candelaria right now. We're about a third of the way through that drill program, and we're going to be putting out some results in the not too distant future. A little bit slow in getting those results with assay labs, and then of course we had the big Christmas break as well. Let's talk about the Cherokee project, another highly prospective project. We staked it. We have the right to 100% interest in it. It's just south of an area called Pioche, which is a silver mining camp, started out in near surface silver, gold, epithermal style veins. They got down into big replacement deposits that also had lead, zinc, and copper. So what have we got at Cherokee? The old mine sits right in through here. We traced the veins for over 12 kilometers along strike, found a second vein system. We checked the title and the ground was open, so we staked the entire ground. We bought the patented claims and a water well at the mill site claim. Now, the only historic drilling on the entire project was down in the southeast corner, down in this region here. That drilling was done in the 1980s, and they were looking for a deep buried porphyry molybdenum deposit. Nobody has ever drilled any of these vein systems. We did extensive surface sampling, and then in the Cherokee and the Johnny Mine and the Hidden Treasure area, I'll show you some of those values. This is essentially the vein systems coming here and across in through here. We're seeing some pretty high grade samples, values up to 1,100 grams per ton silver, 2.3% copper, 950 grams per ton silver, 4.8% copper. Strong vein system, never been drilled. At the south end, we lose the copper, but we're seeing gold coming into the system, perhaps higher level in one of these epithermal systems, but we're getting some pretty interesting values up to almost 1,900 grams per ton silver and 2 grams per ton gold. We flew the project airborne magnetometer survey, similar to what we did at Candelaria, and lo and behold, this is it's mag high sitting down in the southeast corner, could be indicative of that buried intrusive that they were looking for. On surface, we're seeing all sorts of zones of alteration and veining, and we're seeing these big northwest trending structures coming off of this potentially buried intrusive. We've been doing work the last several months up until December last year, and we've been concentrating in areas around in through here, doing lots of more sampling, see if we can upgrade these to a potential drill target. We got a couple of interesting areas. We certainly have the rich veins on patented ground in the Cherokee that could become a drill target next year, but we're starting to delineate some interesting zones down in through here. Just getting all those results tidied up with respect to all the assays in and compilation, and we should be getting some news out on Cherokee coming up in the not too distant future. Now let's talk about another asset that came our way. This was in early 2020. Some prospectors had come to us and they said just outside the big porphyry copper producing area around Globe, Arizona, there's an old silver camp. These prospectors had staked some ground and they were finding little silver nuggets. And what they did was they went back, most of the properties covered by overburden, they got out their metal detectors and they went up an old dry creek bed and they dug about a meter underneath the surface. They pulled out these 3 big vein fragments. Very angular, very unabraded. They look like they haven't traveled very far from their source. The big one came in at a whopping 417 pounds. We did not actually assay it. We didn't want to destroy it. It's a collector's item, but we did specific gravity measurements. This is estimated to contain up to 70% silver. So here's the project located here, 20-minute drive to downtown Globe, big porphyry copper producing area, an old silver camp up in through here. We have old silver mines with native silver reported in them, and here is our project. We did assay some of the smaller fragments. This fragment here contains essentially almost all of that is native silver. We did an assay on it, 459,000 grams per ton silver, or over 14,000 ounces per ton. That's just about 50% pure silver sitting in there. And again, very angular. We has not traveled very far from its source. We've been doing quite a bit of work on the project the last few months. We did an airborne magnetometer survey, and the the magnetometer survey outlined some pretty strong linears, and here's the area where those vein fragments were found. The creek heads upslope to the north. We've traced some veins coming across in an east-west direction and in a northeast direction, and where those veins are projected to intersect is very close to where those vein fragments were found. Also up here near what's called the Mexican mine, we get some nice elevated silver samples, and we also get intersection of interesting structures in through there. We've just put in for a permit for drilling this project. We anticipate to get that permit in the next 2.5, 3 months. And this is the area we're going to target first and foremost to see whether we can find the source of those extremely high-grade vein fragments. Another interesting aspect of the property is not only do we have these potential very high-grade veins, we also have veins down here which have very elevated silver, but they also have strong copper, lead, zinc with gold. And we're just across the valley from this big porphyry copper producing area. We think that might be an overprint from the younger porphyry copper mineralization. And what's interesting is neighbors just to the west of us are actually doing exploration right now for porphyry copper. So this is turning out to be an extremely interesting prospect. And as I said, in the next 2 to 3 months, we hope to be in there and doing some drilling. So essentially, just to sum up, we've got 3 main assets into the company. We've got the Candelaria past producing silver mine. We're testing heaps, doing metallurgical sampling. We're drilling right now, looking for extensions to the near surface along strike mineralization from the pits, high grade underground. We hope to have some economic studies out in 2021. Cherokee, putting together all that information. Will we be doing drilling in 2021? It depends on the priorities of the company with respect to what do we find at Phoenix Silver. I'd like to drill some of those rich veins up at the Cherokee prospect itself. It's on patented ground, so we might put a couple of holes down there to test that out. And then, of course, at Phoenix Silver, we want to proceed with a drill program, hopefully in Q2 of this year. Now, this is our trading pattern here. We figured a rise up in our share price with a rise up in silver. Eric Sprott is our largest shareholder at about 17%. He's participated in the last 3 financings in the company. And you can see that we do trade pretty significant volumes on both our US exchange and our Canadian exchange. So that essentially is the presentation. Quick overview of the company. If anybody has any questions, I'd certainly entertain those.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. Let's dive in. In a former presentation, management discussed regarding Candelaria, a debris field processed by a former owner of the property, and a question was raised how best to glean any extant silver therein. Coarse or finely processed. Has a decision been reached on this processing method?
I'm not sure which project this fellow is talking about. Is he talking about Candelaria? Is he talking about the Phoenix Silver? I'm not sure about the debris field, what he's referring to. Perhaps there's a different description that he could use.
Please
help me out.
More specific.
Please clarify. Yeah, there's lots of aspects to Candelaria. I'm just not sure exactly which one he's talking about.
He says Candelaria site, but that's all I have. So then we'll move to, are there planned exploration programs in 2021? If so, does Silver One self-perform or contract drilling services?
Yes, well, we have the drill program ongoing at Candelaria. That's a 15,000 meter program that's contracted out right now to Major Drilling, and that's ongoing as we speak. We've put in for a drill permit at Phoenix Silver in Arizona, and we haven't contracted that one out yet. It's going to take us another couple of months before we get those permits in place, and then we'll be entertaining contracts to do that drilling.
What are the grades in the leach pads?
The leach pads, the grades are averaging around 40 to 45 grams per ton silver, and we've been doing some metallurgical testing on that, and we're looking at different methods of processing. One could be using what's called HPGR, or high pressure grinder roller technology, to grind to about 2 millimeters and then processing on heap leach pads, or we could look at very fine milling and actually processing either in vat leaches, or we can actually use flotation as well.
So going back to that other question, he meant to say leach pads instead of debris fields.
Okay.
I didn't make that connection either, but
okay. Right. So did I answer the question with the last answer? I couldn't remember his exact question.
So what did the former owner of the property do with the leach pads?
Yes, okay. The former owner of the property, the leach pads were actually started in the 1970s by a group called NERCO. They went on and they sold it off to Kinross. Kinross went on. All told, they produced about 68, 69 million ounces of silver. They were in the process of expanding the leach pads when the big downturn in silver prices came in 97, and with prices going down under $5 per ounce silver, they decided to turn off the taps and sell it off to Silver Standard. But they left behind essentially on the two leach pads close to 45 million ounces of silver. And as I said, the average grade is about 40. They were coarse processed at the time, so we're looking at finer processing.
Okay, and that was his question. Stu, give you a whirl.
Yep, thanks presentation, Greg. I guess whilst on topic of the leach pads, what are some of the potential metallurgical challenges regarding mixing the materials from the old pads from the ore near surface?
Well, there are some metallurgical challenges, no question about it. The original recoveries from the Kinross days when they were processing, they were getting recoveries in the 50 to 55% range. Some of the earlier metallurgical studies we were doing, we were getting, if we did a fine milling, we could get up to 40, 45% recoveries. If we do HPGR, we're only getting about 35% recoveries, but capital costs are so much lower. That could be an opportunity going forward. One of the big issues is that a lot of the silver is tied up with a mineral called jarosite, which makes the recoveries difficult when you use a coarse leaching. So the finer we can leach, if we really want to mill it fine, we can get those recoveries up. We've seen a couple of tests that we've done give us up to 70, 75% recoveries, but what are the capital costs? And we're just going through those whole studies right now, and hopefully we're going to have that all together later this year to present to everybody is what is the best method going forward. And of course, silver prices being at the current level are certainly helping us, that are going to help us make a decision.
Yep, gotcha. Thanks. And then to drilling Candelaria, in Q4, you commenced a 15,000 meter drill program. How much of that's been completed so far?
About a third of it's been completed so far. We had a really slow startup, shall we say. We really got going in November, but even though we were hopefully to get 2 drills, only 1 drill arrived because there's so much demand for drilling right now. Then we took our Christmas break and we're really just getting up and going again. We need to get a track mounted drill in to get some of those near extensions to the open pit, and we're just waiting on that track drill to arrive. So it's going to be another month and a half before we completed this program, I believe.
Gotcha. And then when would you batch up some of the quarters? Oh, sorry, no. So when would you be sending some of the RC chips to the assay labs?
Yeah, some of them have gone in and we're slowly getting them back. It's taken 6 to 8 weeks to get some of these results back, but they're slowly coming in. So I'm hoping to get some news out to our investors in the next 2-3 weeks with some preliminary holes anyway. I don't have a lot of holes back. They're just starting to trickle in.
Yep, gotcha. Thanks for that, Gabe.
Okay.
Sure, thanks, Greg. And just to following on that question in terms of the the results you're expecting back, what sort of ore types are you dealing with in the project area, and what sort of met work or like, I guess, how representative do you think each of these ore types you're testing is of the mineable project area?
Well, essentially, there's a couple of things because we're looking at kind of a little bit of apples and oranges. The old heap leach pads were material that was extracted from the two big open pits. It was essentially initial crush down to about 3/4 of an inch to an inch. And that's what is sitting on the historic leach pads where those big resources are. We conducted an 1,100 meter sonic drill program in late 17, early 18. We collected 1,100 1-meter samples, and then we shipped composites of those materials off to the various labs for metallurgical testing. That's fairly homogeneous, and we're pretty confident in the grades. The recoveries are a direct correlation between what grind size do we want to do, and of course capital costs will go up and down depending on how fine we want to mill them. Now, the second thing as well is the extensions to the open pit mineralization. Unfortunately, we don't have any of the old silver standard materials left, so we have to collect our own. That's part of this reverse circulation drill program. That will be looking at fresh ore, and the fresh ore, as I said, Kinross in their original 3/4 of an inch processing, we're getting 50-55% recoveries. Can we do better than that? That's part of the metallurgical testing that we want to do, but we have to complete the reverse circulation drilling first and foremost to get those samples to do it. And once we get that information, then we'll be able to say, okay, if we mix a certain percentage of the fresh material with the heap leach material, what is that going to do with respect to increasing grade and potential recoveries? How fine a grind size do we want to go to? That's going to depend on silver prices and recoveries.
And do you expect, you mentioned in the earlier answer that you expect something later this year in terms of your quote unquote best method for this?
That's what we hope for. And if everything goes along according to schedule and there's no hiccups, that's what we're aiming for.
And would there be a scenario where you would process just the heap leach material as a standalone?
Possibly. The reasons that we're looking at the potential extensions is there are resources right in the base of the pits and just immediately along strike. We want to drill and just confirm those for everybody. But if we can mix that and increase grade and recoveries, that'll increase the overall economics. The heap leach pads themselves, we could do that, you know, at $25, $30 silver. They're certainly looking interesting on the back of the envelope. But you know, how would they stand out to a more formal pre-feas or feasibility study depends on what comes up with our current metallurgical testing.
Sure. And those ounces in the leach pad, are they included in your total resource, or are they separate?
Well, it depends. We didn't mix it up. We have historic resources there, essentially from the silver standard drilling. Those are in situ resources in and around the pit, down dip from the pit, going into those higher grade zones at depth. Those, you know, essentially amounted to 40-some million ounces measured and indicated, and another, you know, 30-some million ounces inferred. And then, of course, on top of that, we have the heap leach, which is a definable 43-101 current resource of 30 million ounces on the big leach pad and 15 million ounces on the small leach pad. So you're not technically allowed to add the historic to the current, but I'll let you do the math.
Okay. Just my final question is on the sale of the Mexican assets. Have you finalized that?
It's very, very close to being finalized. Essentially, we've agreed all the terms. We've announced that. Just waiting on the other company to get its clearance with respect to, you know, exchange approval and all that. And these things take some time. But with that, we acquired those projects from First Mining Finance for the equivalent of 6 million Canadian dollars in shares. We never paid any cash for them. We're selling them for same value of $6 million worth of $2 million cash and about 5 million shares in the new company, valued at about 80 cents is what the financing is projected to be at.
Got it. And did you keep any royalty or NSR or anything like that?
Yes, we did. We kept a 1.5% royalty on each of the 3 projects. 1% of that can be bought down for $1 million or $500,000, sorry, on each property.
Great. So, okay, got it. So 500 times 3. Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for me. Artie?
Okay. Good.
Thank you. Where do you find those high-grade silver samples at Phoenix project? And like if they are from underground or surface outcrops, why do you think they left unmined?
Well, essentially, it was difficult to find them. If the project, I mentioned this, but it went pretty fast there, is mainly covered by overburden. You don't see much outcrop. When the prospectors went in on the property originally, they were walking up slope and they were finding these little silver fragments, not, maybe thumb size or, and they were kind of tracing them up the slope, but they didn't see any exposed on surface. So they brought their metal detectors in and they went up an old creek bed and they found buried about 1 meter to 1.5 meters under the creek bed. They dug down, they found these 3 big, huge vein fragments. Now we call them vein fragments because they're very angular, they're very unabraded, which means they haven't traveled far from their source. Now our job is to find the in-ground equivalent of those vein fragments, and that's what we're trying to do with our drill program, which is being permitted. It's going to take us another couple months to get those permits, but we want to go in and drill upslope where we think the vein crosses. It's a prospect, it's an exploration program. Can we find the source of those vein fragments? We hope so. We do know that to the east of us, there are some historic vein mines with native silver in them. So we're very optimistic, but time will tell.
Thank you. What would you say about the depth potential of the Candelaria? And what is the deepest elevation that they were mining? What is the depth of the pits?
Oh, sure. Okay, the depth of the pits is between 100 to 150 meters maximum, okay? Now, the vein projections project north, dipping down from those pits, and some of the deepest mineralization that we've intersected and that Silver Standard recorded was about 300 meters deep down dip, and we're getting some higher grade, and as we get really deep around 300 meters, we're getting into some sulfide mineralization, which would be a deeper treatment method down the road. Now, that said, what is the other opportunity? I talked about this potential IOCG target or skarn type target that could be off to the west associated with that big magnetometer high. We're finding those nice samples on the old historic dumps. That would be deeper mineralization, but it could also be very high tonnage and very significant. We don't know. Until we drill, we're not going to know, but that we do want to test some of that in the upcoming drill program. So hopefully we'll get some results out in the next month or 2.
Thank you. Campbell?
Yep.
About the Mount Diablo pit, what is the depth from the original ground level in Pickhandle Gulch to the bottom pit?
Well, as I said, the total depth of the pit from the original exposure at surface, which was Pickhandle, that's right, and essentially it's about 120 meters deep, essentially. I had a section in one of my older presentations which actually showed that. So let's go back and look at that. It's there, or if they want me to send them a copy of that, I can do that. The Northern Bell pit, which is the second pit, might be just slightly deeper, but overall between 100 and 150 meters.
Could you talk about financing history and future financing needs?
Yes, we've essentially done a series of financings. All of them have been private placements. We've never done a brokered financing. The last financing that we did was in July of last year. That was 9.5 million. And as I said, Eric Sprott came in for the third time on a private placement into our company. He put in 5 million of the 9.5 million. We currently have in our treasury approximately $13.5 million. And of that, we're probably going to be expending an additional $2 million to complete the drill program. And then we've probably slated about another $1.5 million to $2 million on Phoenix Silver and Cherokee for next year. There could be another drill program taking place at Candelaria. We'll make that decision after we compile all the data. Are we doing another financing? Not right in the near future, but if we are successful on any of our projects and we want to move fast and advance them, we may have to go back to the markets. We'll see.
All right, Stu, you had some questions?
Yeah, just had a question. So, how much more exploration work do you need to do at Cherokee and Phoenix before you could kind of further define some drill targets?
Yeah, well, Cherokee, essentially, on the patented claims where the old Cherokee small scale mining actually took place, I think we have some drill targets there we could actually go in. And the only reason we haven't made the decision to do that is because we're kind of already put a drill permit in for our Phoenix Silver project in Arizona. So, too many balls in the air, you don't want to fumble anything. So, but we could be drilling at Cherokee a little bit later in the year. As soon as we get the permits for Phoenix Silver, we'll get in there and do some drilling on the Phoenix Silver. Once we complete the project at Candelaria, we'll assess all the information. We'll make a decision. Do we want to go back and drill some additional targets there later this year? So, lots of things to do, and we just got to prioritize them and manage them. The other thing as well is at Cherokee, what's interesting is some of those other areas that we've done some detailed sampling on could be defined as drill targets as well. Not quite as well defined as the actual mineralization around the Cherokee mine, but still interesting and could warrant a hole or two to test.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay.
And whilst economic studies are planned for later this year, are there any key areas of the capex you're focusing on now? Candelaria, I'll give you some thoughts too.
I'm not sure what you mean by the capex. What would be the capex for various scenarios? Yeah, okay. Yeah, to give you a crude idea is when we originally did the testing, McClellan Labs back in 2018, they come up with a scenario where we would mill down to a very fine 200 mesh, and with that milling, we would have to then process in big vats. The problem with that was the capital costs were probably inching up to $100 million, and we thought that was too much, particularly when silver prices were languishing in about the $13 range at the time. So we looked at doing HPGR technology, which is essentially a much coarser grind. It's being used successfully at some of our other silver operations in Nevada, like Coeurs Rochester Mine. Newmont's using it on the gold projects, etc. That HPGR technology would look at grinding only down to about 2 millimeters, so we wouldn't have to do fine milling. Much reduced capital costs, probably a half to a third of what would be required for the fine milling. We're looking at some other milling opportunities as well, using other technologies, but that's part of the ongoing studies. So stay tuned on that.
Perfect, thanks for that. Campbell?
I think we've kind of reached the top of the hour of the event, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in and for your great questions. And we'll be queuing you for feedback. Please share your feedback with us, and it'll get to Greg and his team soon after. With that, Greg, a closing statement.
No, well, I just want to thank you and thank everybody else for listening. And if anybody requires any additional information, please reach out to us. You'll see on the screen there our contact information. Gary Linzer is our investor relations guy, and reach out to him and he'll certainly get any requests back to me as quickly as possible. So thank you, and stay tuned for more news coming out from Silver One.
And you can find Silver One on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you can find Greg on LinkedIn and Amvest Capital. Thank you very much, and good day, everyone.
Thank you.